Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm Sana Maqbool and you're watching Pakistan TV. We're going to, of course, talk about the big news. The United States, along with Egypt, Qatar and Turkey, have signed a historic Gaza peace deal. Of course, our Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif was also in attendance of this very historic deal that has been signed after Mr. Trump visited Israel and then went on his way to the peace summit in Egypt. And this is, of course, something where the historic Gaza peace deal declaration has been signed, an important document that covers comprehensively key aspects of the rules and regulations that are going to go ahead with what really happens and are going to define what the future is going to be after the very important prisoner and hostage exchange that happened earlier in the day today, with about 2,000 Palestinians being returned home and about 20 Israeli captives returning home as well. And this is integral not just in this very important exchange, but also in the ways that countries like the United States and Pakistan, Qatar, Turkey and Egypt that have worked very, very hard to achieve this particular goal and to ensure that there is peace in Gaza, that there is an end to the suffering of the people of Gaza, and that humanitarian aid is something that is brought within the region, all of which is happening 2 years after the genocide ended. And this is something really important also to understand, that there is a lot of work that still remains to be done. For now, there is so much of celebration and there is enough cause to welcome this very historic step. And as you heard, speeches coming in from various world leaders, including the President of the United States, Mr. Trump, the Egyptian Premier, and of course Pakistan's Prime Minister as well, who have emphasized on how peace is important in Gaza and how exactly we're going to move ahead with ensuring that that happens. A first step of this landmark deal is, of course, welcome, but where this is heading and who is going to ensure that remains to be the important question, with the U.S. President claiming that Israel will hold the ceasefire as he embarked on Air Force One earlier today. We're going to be taking a look at this more in focus with our guest, who has also joined us online, Mr. Faiz Rehman, who's an international affairs expert. Let's speak to him more about what really is going on. Thank you, Mr. Faiz, for joining us and being a part of the debate today. I'd like your perspective on when we take a look at this very historic deal. Of course, there's so much to celebrate and welcome, and it is important for the people of Gaza to finally get some humanitarian aid in the region, and the very important prisoner and his hostage exchange that we saw earlier in the day today. However, when we take a look at what has been signed, what do you make of the kind of statements that we heard from the U.S. President claiming that there are lots of rules and regulations that have been outlined, that there is a comprehensive way forward? What do you think has truly been achieved with the help of these countries and, of course, the United States?
Thank you, Sana. Thank you. See, one of the, I think, the most important things that the world as a whole, and you see all the representation there, so many people, so many, world leaders were there in the signing ceremony. And as the Prime Minister himself, Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif himself, outlined in his speech, I think it was an impromptu speech, not probably scheduled, but he did speak very well, as mentioned by President Trump himself. So I think the first and foremost thing for most of the people in the world was to see a ceasefire, to see the end to the sufferings of the Palestinian people, the bloodshed. We say over 70,000. We still don't know the exact count, but absolutely 70,000, even one person being killed, innocent and without any reason, was too much for the world to bear. And when the world at large started seeing the videos, the pictures of those maimed and killed children from Gaza, that was, more than enough for the people to absorb, to actually ignore and to tolerate. So you see, I think I see this as a logical culmination of first phase. And as you pointed out in your intro, we still don't know all the details, but so far it's been very encouraging, especially President Trump putting his personal prestige, his legacy, and his entire history for his presidency online. So I think we should have good hopes, but first and foremost, it was to see the end of bloodshed.
Absolutely. And that, of course, is very, very important when we talk about the immediate steps to be taken. But Mr. Faiz, I also want your take on when we listen to what the US president was just talking about in terms of the help of so many countries and the collaborative efforts of countries in the Middle East and the larger Arab Islamic region as well, including Pakistan. I want your take then on how do you think this momentum will continue? Because there is, of course, what's going on in Gaza. There is the end of genocide, the coming in of humanitarian aid, and the prisoner swap that is so important in terms of executing a peaceful way forward. But in terms of the larger Middle East and what Mr. Trump was referring to as a prevention of any possible escalation of World War III in the region, how do you see the momentum going forward, given the fact that Israel previously has attacked a number of these countries? And it is also important to understand what really is going on in the international court against Netanyahu. How then will these countries be able to unite and have a collaborative stance against Israeli expansion in the region?
Great question, Sana, and I'm very hopeful, and I can only be hopeful actually. See, you haven't seen this kind of show on this grandiose scale, and by putting this show together, I think what President Trump and his team has done. You see a lot of discredit to the UN itself. After all these years, for the last 2 years, you see bloodshed. The UN couldn't do a thing except passing those resolutions, and of course, some of those resolutions was vetoed. You saw OIC, you saw other international forums having done nothing. But this was a show where most of the Western world was represented at the highest level, and of course the Middle East. Almost every country in the Middle East was there. Pakistan as a major player in the Muslim world, and now actually, a power reckoned to be. So I mean, you to be reckoned. So I mean, this is something that you haven't seen in ages. So I can only be hopeful because there is no other way around. If you lose hope, even after having seen this show, I don't think anything else can or could have done this, could have ended this bloodshed. So let's see. Let's not be so pessimistic about this. I'm sure there are questions, there are some concerns on the Palestinian side as well as on the other side. But the Palestinians were also represented by the PLO side, the PLA. Mahmoud Abbas, President Mahmoud Abbas was there. So it was, I think, a very comprehensive show, the comprehensive meeting of the minds of almost of the entire world leadership, the leaders that matter in this case. So let's keep the hopes alive. Let's see what happens. Again, it has been celebrated on both sides in Gaza. You've seen, celebrations in the streets by the, children whose lives been spared, and you, of course, saw lots of celebrations on the other side in Israel. But of course, what remains to be seen and what remains to be done, in my opinion, is some introspection on both sides. What have they gained? What have they lost in this 2 years of senseless, unreasonable, and brutal violence? And without, I mean, I wouldn't even call it a war, Sana. I was actually, I call it an invasion
It's
on
genocide.
unarmed people of Gaza, and that's how most people in the world saw it. And you see, when the world, the opinion, when the world opinion gets behind something, you see a real change, and we have seen it in so many other cases. But this is one case where you have seen such a great representation of world powers, of all the major world powers. So they'll be the guarantors. So we see, some good hopes there.
Right, Mr. Rehman, what next is there for Netanyahu and Israel? Because when we take a look at what's going on, especially when we talk about the international courts, and then also in terms of what is going on within Israel and the domestic influence that exists against Netanyahu, there seems to be a lot of buildup there. And so what is the effect of this Gaza peace deal on Israel's internal politics, and especially Netanyahu's own political future, given also the fact that just in this peace summit, we have seen an example of how how he's not truly welcome in terms of how different aspects of the courts are still against him, how there are arrest warrants, of course, that are out by the International Court against him as well. And the way that the Turkey head of state also reacted to an invitation by Mr. Trump to Netanyahu. So how do you see this in the future working out for him?
Well, had this war continued, you would have seen probably a very, his term, what you call the termination of his political career sooner than later. But of course, I think he got a little, longer lease. And actually, President Trump helped him a lot. But now he's celebrating the release of the hostages, which, I mean, could have been, just imagine, 2 years of this invasion on an unarmed people territory with all your might, and the US behind you totally, and some other world powers as well, and you couldn't secure the release of the hostages, uh, and it was made possible only after this accord. So I mean, this is I don't know how the public, Israeli public right now sees it, but you see still a lot of concern and resentment against that person, and he may have gotten a little, longer lease because of this accord, but he's not totally out of the hot waters, in my opinion. And the only thing for him to celebrate is just the release of those 20 hostages. But as opposed to 20 hostages, they had to release some, of course, about 1,700 or so were the people who were never charged and rounded up during this invasion. But some of them were actually on life sentence, so they were also released. So I mean, there are some gains and losses on both sides. But Netanyahu, how long he's going to last? I think he doesn't have too many days to, or maybe months. But in my opinion, he's not totally out of the hot waters.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Faiz Rehman, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. We talked about also how Pakistan, of course, had put forward its own stance and own role in this very important development. And as Mr. Rehman was speaking about the speech by the Prime Minister, it's important to highlight the key aspects that were spoken about, especially the way that he's spoken about what next is for Gaza and how exactly this peace deal is going to impact the region. And then, of course, the very important role that the United States president had to play with it, given the fact that Pakistan has always appreciated that, and the Prime Minister also said that he is truly a man of peace and that he nominates him once again for the Nobel Peace Prize. Here's what he said. Let's take a look.
Today is one of the greatest days in contemporary history because peace has been achieved after untiring efforts led by President Trump, who is genuinely a man of peace, who has relentlessly and untiringly worked throughout these months, day in and day out, to make this world a place to live with peace and prosperity. Suffice it to say, had it not been for this gentleman, not only, who knows, India and Pakistan are both nuclear powers. Had he not intervened along with his wonderful team, during those 4 days, the war could have escalated to a level. Who would have lived to tell what happened? And similarly, here in this part of the world, in the Middle East, Mr. President, your valuable contribution along with President Sisi, I think history will remember in golden words. I wouldn't say more, except God bless you, God give you long life to serve like this for all time to come. Thank you very much. I would say that Pakistan had nominated President Donald Trump for Nobel Peace Prize for his outstanding, extraordinary contributions to first stop war between India and Pakistan and then achieve ceasefire along with his very wonderful team. And today, again, I would like to nominate this great president for Nobel Peace Prize.
You heard what the Prime Minister was speaking about at this very important summit where the United States and other countries have signed the historic Gaza peace deal. And it's important to note, of course, Pakistan's own contribution to these peace efforts. And then, of course, the appreciation that the Prime Minister was speaking about with reference to the role that the United States President has played. There is, of course, a lot of effort that goes into collaborative steps forward. But there was the championing of the end to this genocide that has come from countries like the United States, Pakistan, Qatar, Turkey and Egypt, many of whom, of course, have called for the end of this genocide and an immediate ceasefire and, of course, moving forward with the very important hostage and prisoner exchange, humanitarian aid to come within the country, and, of course, then having the discussion forward as to what next. It is important, of course, to understand that there is a lot more that needs to be done on the front of making sure that the people of Gaza truly achieve peace, truly achieve a free Palestine, which is what their right is, and of course something that Pakistan stands by as well. There is a lot that needs to be done in order to reach to that point. It is just the first phase of the landmark deal that has been achieved, but an important step to define what the future will be and how to ensure moving on to the next phase where we can talk about the way that the Palestinian Authority is going to look like, how exactly will Hamas's own element be within the region, moving forward with disarmament and timelines and maps, all of which will require the United States' continuous influence over Israel and the larger region to ensure that Netanyahu, in fact, does move ahead and holds the ceasefire and abides by whatever peace deal is agreed upon, and then, of course, moving forward to a truly Palestinian state. For more on this, we've been joined by Ahmed Moustafa, who's a senior journalist from Egypt. Thank you very much, Moustafa, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. I want your take on, when we, of course, take a closer look at this historic Gaza peace deal, what are your thoughts in terms of how exactly will be implemented on ground, and in what ways do you think this historic step will truly be historic in terms of when it is put on ground and tangible action is taken for the future and peace of Gaza?
In my view, I think this is the first time just to have such gathering for having like a settlement for the Palestinian cause in this regard. And we have two main points concerning the guarantees, because this is the most important and the most crucial questions that I was asked over the past 10 days. Whether there's going to be like a guarantees for, the settlement of Gaza and to put an end for this, dispute between Palestine or Hamas from one side and the Zionist entity from the other side. One of the best guarantees that the Arabs and the Muslim countries should be unified and having collective actions and being maybe behind the Egyptian state. This is number one, because before we were suffering over the past 2 years from having like a non-collective action, and that was like a big chance for the West and for Israel just to manipulate all the effort just to stop the, systemized genocide and Holocaust against our brothers over there in Gaza. And it is represented in, the figures and the numbers of the killed innocent people, over than 65,000 of the innocent, including, kids and women and elder people and innocent people and civil people over there, as well as, they displaced more than 1.2 million, and the injured about 125,000 of the injured, including, the bombarding, the devastation and destruction of all the infrastructure over there in Gaza, because Gaza before October 7th, it was one of the most developed, spots here in the Arab world and in the Middle East. If you review the maps of Gaza before the 7th of October. Number two, I think the presence of the West, headed by President Trump, it was the second guarantee, because all his answers and remarks that was given since the start of the talks that already initiated via the Middle Eastern, guarantors headed by Egypt and then via Turkey, Qatar, as well as Pakistan and Indonesia. The people or the presidents or the heads who met Mr. Trump via the UNGA number 80 in New York. It was like a continuity of such, talks and things like that, and being adhered to the first draft that already submitted by the side that is to the favor of the people of Gaza and to the favor of Hamas and having equitable rights versus, the Zionist entity. This is number two. Therefore, if we accomplish one, we still have this unified and collective action from the Arab and the Islamic world behind Egypt. And number two, making the Western side headed by Trump, adhered to the terms of this agreement. Both of them jointly will make a difference. But I think this time is, as I told you before, even in several interviews, is very crucial because the economic situation worldwide, and he said to them via the Zionist entity today, Mr. Trump, when he was in Jerusalem, that if you continue for 1 or 2 years later, it will be very worse situation for you. It is negating all what he said and all the praising he told them in the beginning.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Ahmed Moustafa, for joining us and sharing those views. It was absolutely important in terms of what the future would hold. The very important Gaza peace deal has been signed by the United States, Egypt, Qatar, Turkey, and a number of other countries that were in attendance, including Pakistan. This is very, very important in terms of how we're going to move ahead with peace in Gaza. But what is welcome, of course, is a prisoner and hostage exchange that has already happened and humanitarian aid that has started to trickle in. And, of course, the conversation forward in terms of moving towards a second phase of discussions of a truly peaceful region and a truly free Palestine. How exactly that will be implemented seems to be part of this historic deal is what the United States president seems to be claiming, that it is comprehensive, it includes all kinds of rules and regulations as to how to implement this peace deal. And then, of course, moving forward, the difficult aspects of the conversation as to what the future will likely hold are going to continue. And as we discuss, what is most important is that this peace deal stands true, and that is something that the United States president also mentioned earlier today, saying that the ceasefire will hold, and this is something that he's going to ensure Israel also takes care of. Whether or not that happens remains to be seen, but what happened today is indeed historic, and we are in support of the champion of peace in terms of the efforts that the United States has played along with partner countries like Pakistan, and that is what Pakistan has always stood for. That's all that we have from the debate today. We'll now see you tomorrow.